I don't think Hoid's end goal is what everyone's theorizing it is. And I think my counter theory makes a lot of sense. So leading theory you're going to hear out there right now is that Hoid is trying to reform Adonalsium. Now, while Brandon has kind of given this theory the nod, it doesn't make sense to me because Adonalsium was shattered intentionally. And a point Brandon has repeatedly made is that immortality is dangerous. We have seen characters who've been alive even just a few centuries start to go insane. We've also seen the intent of the shards completely overwhelm the vessels, which makes me wonder, do we need vessels? And is the whole point of them at this point just hubris? And that led me to this theory, which is that Hoid is not trying to reform Adonalsium, he's trying to get the vessels to give up their power. I think Hoid actually got this idea from the Conjurer. Now, most of his scenes in the original Mistborn trilogy wound up being cut. I think it's possible that he learned about the trust and he learned about the Conjurer's proposed sacrifice, and that was actually his purpose for being on Scadrial at the time. And considering how much Brandon loves foreshadowing, it would be such a cool full circle moment for the final book in the Cosmere, which is the last Mistborn trilogy, to end with the same sort of self-sacrifice as that first trilogy did. I think this is actually already happening right now, but you have to be super intentional about the order because you don't want, a cultivation and endowment to give up their power back to the universe before a shard like Ruin and Odium. And this could also be why so much of the Cosmere is focused on these two planets with the two most dangerous shards. Now, we have two shards that are pretty much missing right now, and that is Valor and Reason. But what two intents would be the most willing to give up that power and convince? Again, Valor and Reason. Now, I'm going to get into the mechanics of how this works, but in order to do that, we have to talk about Isles of the Emberdark. That counts as your spoiler warning, so don't get sassy with me in the comments. Now, the safest way for these shards to relinquish that power would be to go to the Spirit Shores. And as we find out in Emberdark, the Spirit Shores is this place where dragons go to essentially fade away. And Emberdark also mentions that whatever shard or shards is on Scadrial was the first to do something that was pretty cool, and that could be relinquishing this power. Now, huge shout out to Cosmere Conversations, who said during a panel at Nexus they think that Hoid's wife is on the Spirit Shores, and that this would make sense because that's where Starling asked, "Have you spoken to your wife?" and why Hoid would answer that she doesn't remember him. Now, I'm going to take this a step farther and say that Valor is Hoid's wife. We know that they had a previous relationship, and if he was able to convince her to go to the Spirit Shores and fade away, it could explain a little bit more about the guilt that we seem to get from him. Now, my question here would be if you have to be a dragon in order to use the Spirit Shores, or if you can just be a super powerful person who goes there to gently fade away and lose those powers as well. Now, obviously, there's a lot of unanswered questions here, and one of my top ones is if there's any sort of benefit for Shard's intent having a vessel. And is there a way to safely return that intent to the Cosmere in a way where you're not splintered or destroyed, so it's not a situation like Dominion or Ambition or Devotion?